St. Paul's United Church. This community, this part of the land, known by speakers of Cree as Misquaskahagan, is Treaty 6 land. And we in St. Paul's United Church respectfully acknowledge this territory and the relationships on this traditional gathering place for diverse peoples. The Cree, the Blackfoot, Métis, Nakota Sioux, Iroquois, Dene, Ojibwe, Saulteaux, Anishinaabe, Inuit, many others. And the languages, histories, and cultures continue to influence our vibrant communities. Welcome to this time of worship. In a few minutes, we're going to go along the avenue to the roundabout, the traffic circle. In the meantime, though, some of our friends and members of the congregation have just come up the sidewalk. Look, here's Jen and Joseph. I'm so excited. There's an opportunity to say hello. Hello.
Hello.
Lovely to see you. Thank you, and God bless you. Enjoy the sunshine. Welcome indeed. I'm Catherine Faith McLean. I get to be the senior minister in this congregation. Susan Farrell is our music director. Tyson Kerr is our musician, and it may well be that there is a glimpse of the choir in the video today as well. May peace be with you. May the Spirit move. May the joy that is the life of faith, despite everything, the joy of the love of God, be with you, and may this time of worship be an opportunity to think about things and consider things and remember that you are loved in our church. Do you ever get stuck in a moral dilemma? Do you feel like you're going around and around and around and around on the same question? Kind of like a traffic circle? Forgiveness, maybe? Can forgiveness be like that? You go around the question and around the question and around the question. You come back to the hurt and back to the hurt and try to figure out why you did it. Or maybe you're trying to figure out how to get over what someone did to you. You go around and around that hurt. Hi there. And sometimes you don't get out of the circle. Sometimes you're stuck. Forgiveness can be like that when something sits so deeply in our soul that it becomes a barrier. Boundaries are good. Boundaries are good, and where we know that there will be hurt, to set up a boundary is exactly the right thing. To know where we might hurt someone else, to set up a boundary is a very good thing. But sometimes the hurt that we carry, for instance, the hurt that we carry, is such a problem to get away from that it becomes a part of our identity, or it becomes a part of the identity of that relationship with that person. And we end up going around and around and not being able to get out, not being able to get away, not being able to get beyond the problem, the hurt, the issue, the pain becomes part of who we are. It hurts, and it hurts. Forgive and forget is a common phrase. You know, it isn't biblical. It is not biblical. Bishop Desmond Tutu said this: forgiving is not forgetting. It's actually remembering and not using your right to hit back. It's a second chance for a new beginning. And the remembering part is particularly important, especially if you don't want to repeat what happened. Considering forgiveness.
Listen, listen, God is calling, through the word inviting, offering forgiveness, comfort and joy. Listen, listen, God is calling, He's calling, through the word inviting, He's calling, offering forgiveness, comfort and joy. Listen, God is calling, He's calling, through the word inviting, He's calling, offering forgiveness, comfort and joy.
I stepped in off the street somewhere a little more quiet, the Memorial Garden here at St. Paul's, somewhere a little more quiet than the traffic circle and the intersection. I want to offer you a definition, I suppose, of forgiveness. It comes from this book, Wishful Thinking by Fred Buechner. I want to show you my bookmark. Isn't that fantastic? Anna made that bookmark for me. We do go all over the place, don't we, in these worship videos, in my little car. So, forgiveness is not the same thing as absolution. It's not the same thing as pardon. It's not the same thing as reconciliation. They're all their own things. Grace is something else indeed. Peace of mind, peace of soul is something else indeed. And, you know, we get to those things in a variety of different ways. But today, while we're thinking about forgiveness, I want to read you what Fred Buechner wrote about it. To forgive somebody is to say one way or another, you have done something unspeakable. And by all rights, I should call it quits between us. Both my pride and my principles demand no less. However, although I make no guarantees that I will be able to forget what you've done, and though we may both carry the scars for life, I refuse to let it stand between us. I still want you for my friend. To accept forgiveness means to admit that you've done something unspeakable that needs to be forgiven. And thus both parties must swallow the same thing, their pride. This seems to explain, Fred goes on to say, this seems to explain what Jesus means when he says to God, forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. We say that every week, don't we, when we're gathered in worship? Many of us say it every day in our daily prayers. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Fred goes on to say, Jesus is not saying that God's forgiveness is conditional upon our forgiving others. It's not a quid pro quo. It's not a series of ledgers. It's not an equation. Let's let that truck go by. I thought it would be quieter in here. And it often is. There. So much happening in the neighborhood, so much happening in the city. Construction. So, Jesus is not saying that God's forgiveness is conditional upon our forgiving others, that we don't get forgiven unless we forgive others. In the first place, forgiveness that is conditional isn't really forgiveness at all. It's just fair warning. And in the second place, our unforgivingness is among those things about us which we need to have God forgive us most. Our unforgivingness is among those things about us which we need to have God forgive us most. What Jesus apparently is saying is that the pride which keeps us from forgiving is the same pride which keeps us from accepting forgiveness. And will God please help us to do something about it? I will go inside shortly. It's such a beautiful day. I want to think with you outdoors in this beautiful, beautiful air about the prayer Jesus taught. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. That line that some of us say by heart, we have it memorized. We've been saying it for years, and we have it by heart. Isn't that a great expression? That prayer Jesus taught, we have, some of us, we know it by heart. So I know by heart these words about trespasses. That does sound a bit like a balance sheet, but that's not the way. It's not the way the love of God operates. It's not the way we experience the love of God. The love of God that is unconditional, not conditional upon my action, as though I could manipulate God to do something. And yet, in this prayer, I recognize that by forgiving others, I release myself. I mean, it sounds psychological, but it is spiritual. By forgiving others, I release myself. I free myself up from the hurt. Doesn't mean I forget it, doesn't mean I leave it behind, but it means that I'm not burdened by it. That's one part of it. The other part has to do with the understanding of God's love and God's forgiveness. We anticipate that God's love is universal and constant. I anticipate that God's love is universal and constant. But that does not mean that God is indulgently tolerant of the things I do wrong, the way I hurt people, and the things you do wrong, the way you hurt people, the ways that we as communities, groups of people, nations, cultures, races, groups, identities, hurt other people. God is not indulgent in that. We can't expect that God is turning a closed eye, not aware. So love is constant. God's awareness is constant. It's perhaps a delicate kind of connection, but I think in some ways it lifts us beyond being foolhardy or naive or assuming that because we know we're loved by God, whatever we do doesn't really matter, that it's kind of forgiven before it even happens. That's not honest. It's not faithfully diligent. Nor does it bear truck with what we know of God in our scriptural experiences, in our own stories of faith that we tell one another. So this is what it is that behind the actual forgiveness is a readiness to forgive. Okay? So in relieving these trespasses, if I have a readiness to forgive, even if I'm not quite ready yet to forgive, but if I know that at some point I want to forgive, rather than letting the hurt kind of crystallize inside me and become a barrier become part of my identity, become a rock over which I stumble, to use a biblical allusion. If I have a desire to forgive, then I'm on the spiritual path. And the understanding of God's love is that God is always ready to forgive. There's something really important, though, that's a distinct difference between the two, and I want to come to that.
Dear God, who loves all humankind, forgive our foolish ways. Reclothe us in your rightful mind, in pure lives thy service find, in deeper reverence praise, in deeper reverence praise. Drop thy stairs of kindness, till all our striving cease. Take from our souls the strain and stress, and let our ordered lives confess thy beauty of thy peace, thy beauty of thy peace.
Here we are in our beautiful kitchen at St. Paul's, beautiful kitchen that is so elegantly laid out so that we can easily have community meals and coffee and conversation and potlucks and presentations over sandwiches and chili and pies at pie auctions, so that we can be together and learn together and all those things. So this kitchen is waiting for us, and see how the lights work? Isn't it grand? It's grand. So here I am in the kitchen because, of course, in a kitchen, what does one find? Well, in this particular kitchen, one finds lots of teacups, lots of plates, lots of pots, all kinds of things ready for those occasions that we will celebrate together. And of course, there's a little sugar prepared for the coffee and tea time, and juice crystals, and a lot of peanut butter. And I want to show you this. This is a milk and sugar set that was given to the staff by Andy Stewart. Andy and Pearl had this set in their home. And you know, one of the things about being part of community is remembering the people who have died and how much they loved us and how much we love them. And you know, when we have tea in the staff area, we pull out this sugar container and the creamer. However, I'm not here to talk about sugar today, because I have hidden away in it, sometimes under the saccharine nature of our spirits, we are able to hold a very bitter soul. Know anybody like that? Ever been like that? Do you know anyone like that? Have you ever been like that? Have I ever been like that? We are great at veils and masks. And so, in this little sugar container, I am pulling out, yes, you got it, salt and pepper. We're not really needing to deal with pepper today. I want to talk about salt briefly, because salt is bitter, isn't it? Now, we need salt, yes, to flavor our food, all that kind of thing. But when you have too much salt, if you put salt in something instead of sugar, say on your porridge in the morning, the bitterness, it just sits there, doesn't it? And it takes a lot of strong tea to wash that flavor away. The bitterness that's connected with, that is the bitterness that is connected with withholding forgiveness, can become deeply rooted. Tears are salty. And there's a point where tears and hurt, yes, indeed, we acknowledge them. I've already said there are times when we can't get beyond things, but so often we can. So often, this salty bitterness in our lives is something that we might be able to put away. Bitterness can become so deeply rooted in our souls that it destroys our life and our love. Bitterness can be so deeply rooted in our identity that we are unable to engage other relationships, to be open and warm and ourselves. But to glimpse a different possibility, a renewed life, a refreshed life, to move this bitterness away. That's what forgiveness does. That's what asking for forgiveness does. That's what receiving forgiveness does. It clears us so that we are able to love deeply. So that we're not wearing this shield of fear. So that we're not hiding behind the pain. When there are more of you in this kitchen with me, there will be more movement, and so you're not going to see me going in and out of shadow as much. Anyway, maybe we'll leave that thought there for now. That forgiveness, deeply spiritually rooted forgiveness, refreshes us so that we are able to love deeply, so that we are not inhibited. Forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. Amen. You know, in here with the salt shaker, with Andy and Pearl Stewart's cream and sugar, the pepper's still hiding in there. This is a good place to pray, a great place to pray. Everywhere is a great place to pray, but I want to pray here for two reasons. The kitchen is often the heart of a community. The kitchen is often the warm place in a home. It's where we like to welcome people for potlucks. And in a church, a kitchen is a place where so much activity happens and we look after one another with nurture, with food and pie and squares and tea and coffee and with love. So in the kitchen from which so much is generated. This is a prayer. This is the second reason why it's here. From the Corrymeela community. The Corrymeela community is the oldest peace and reconciliation organization in Ireland, and they have a book called Daily Prayers. And they also are online with daily prayers. I'm happy to lend you the book. You can also look up Corrymeela. We'll put the name of it at the end of this video if you want to look up and get the daily prayers to come to you electronically. This daily prayer is from April of this year. Ready to go? God who forgives us. God whose forgiveness leads us back into relationship. With the grace that we have received from you, let us work to mend what forgiveness makes possible. May we stress not a desire to be proved right, but a desire to make right what still needs forgiven. Amen.
is the touch of intangible joy. Love is the force that no fear can destroy. Love is the goodness we gladly applaud. God is where love is, for love is of God.
Love is the lilt in a lingering voice. Love is the hope that can make us rejoice. Love is the cure for the frightened and flawed. God is where love is, for love is of God.
Love is the light in a tunnel of pain. Love is the will to be whole once again. Love is the trust of a friend on the road. God is where love is, for love is of God.
Love is the maker and spirit and son. Love is the kingdom their will has begun. Love is the path which the saints all have trod. God is where love is, for love is of God.
The painting by Mary Gander. And the cactus, look at those blooms. Here we are at the prayer wall. Let's pause here for a moment with the words of that prayer from the Corrymeela community again, and then we'll move slowly through the prayer Jesus taught. God who forgives us, God whose forgiveness leads us back into relationship. With the grace we have received from you, let us work to mend what forgiveness makes possible. May we stress not a desire to be proven right, but a desire to make right what still needs forgiven. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Listen, listen, God is calling, through the word inviting, offering forgiveness, comfort and joy. Listen, listen, God is calling, through the word inviting, He's calling, offering forgiveness, comfort and joy. Listen, God is calling, through the word inviting, He's calling, offering forgiveness, comfort and joy.
God bless you. As you travel through these days, as you end up in roundabouts, as you forge a direction for your activities, for your generosity, for your love. May you find that there are new and exciting things under construction. May you find that you have a freedom of spirit that comes from grace. And may you find that there is generosity in your heart, so you're able to love the world. God bless you.
There must be a God somewhere over my head.